Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to today's Community of Action Advocating for Exceptional Learners, hosted by the Educating All Learners Alliance, or ELA for short, and the National Parents Union. My name is Whitley Patterson from the Educating All Learners Alliance, and I'll be your host. Before we dive into today's content, I'll share some information about ELA. We are a coalition of organizations dedicated to producing and sharing resources, programs, and events like these dedicated to supporting students with learning differences. With us today, we have Jason B. Allen from the National Parents Union from ELA's Community of Action Highlight. The goal of our Community of Action was to identify and address shared challenges in special education and to empower individual members to advance their own work, but also contribute to education at large. Over 2 days, 19 diverse stakeholders, 5 coaches, and 4 ELA staff members in the field of special education discussed areas of challenge and opportunity, and 2 projects walked away with the project funding. Jason was within one of those communities selected groups to gain funding. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. We're so excited to hear about your organization and your work from Community of Action. I'll pass it over from Jason to Jason from NPU to start today's presentation.
Awesome, Willie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate those words and working with you along this journey. And one thing I would definitely say is that for all the participants, Willie is definitely going to make sure that you have those notes. So shout out to her. As a fellow teacher, I know that those notes are going to be on time and on point. And so I'm excited about today. I'll start with the name of the presentation, which is Advocating for Exceptional Learners. I am Jason B. Allen. I am a part of the National Parents Union, and it's an amazing organization. Now, let me tell you a little bit about us. You're probably like, it's the National Parents Union. We figured it out from the name. You're correct. However, we are also a collective network of grassroots parent and like-minded organizations that are supporting what really needs to happen in order to elevate parent voices and gain equity for all students. And so if you're not a parent group, you could be a parent leader. You could be an organization based around family engagement. You could be advocating for housing equity or anything that really impacts the greater needs of our families and our parents. And so we look forward to connecting with you a little bit more after the presentation. Now, before I move past this very first slide, Advocating for Exceptional Learners, if you are not aware of Dr. Howard Fuller, he is a longtime civil rights and education advocate. He is best known in the school choice movement, helping create schools that are really meeting the needs of students. And so this is Dr. Fuller with some of my former students. This was a while ago before the pandemic with our school leader, Christina Guillen, who created the first non-suspension school for students in the state of Georgia. And so this is our school. We have a large population of exceptional learners. That is the term that we use in regards to students in our special education program. I'm very interactive, so participants, I would love to know in the comment section, what do you call your students? Do you refer to them as students in special education? Do you refer to them as exceptional learners? So feel free to drop that inside of the chat for people to really kind of see how we're using different terms in different spaces. As a special education teacher in Georgia, we use the terminology exceptional learners. All right. Jason B. Allen again. My information will be at the end of the presentation, so I'm going to keep on moving past me and get to the start of this presentation. So let me also tell you that even though I'm presenting, I'm also taking notes, just thinking about ideas of so many things that can be shared, but also looking at what you guys are saying in the comment section. So the teacher in me wants to say, please make sure that you are taking notes. Let's start with knowing who we are advocating for. This is very important for us to start here. Now, of course, in front of you, it says, in order to be an effective advocate, we must first know who we are advocating for. I always start with this line when I'm talking to fellow educators, people who influence policy, school board members, but also parents and family members. Exceptional learners includes everyone, because I truly believe that we all learn differently. And I learned this from one of my former students. This is Donovan. He is now in high school. Donovan started with us. He had only passed 2 of the state standardized tests because of how he was diagnosed and what's in his IEP. I'm going to get to terminology in a little bit. And so I learned how to advocate for Donovan, not from his learning goals. I learned it directly from him. I actually interviewed every student before we started the year. So this is a tip that I'm giving out for free. Interviewing students is a good way to learn who you're advocating for. And so I took that time at the beginning of the year to interview each student. They had never experienced that. They all said that no one had ever asked them what they needed. So when you think about advocating for our students, getting to know them is key to that process, okay? Now, I said I was coming to some acronyms and some terms that we needed to know, and these are important. 504, SST, IEP, IHP, BIP, and EIP. I'm going to spend a few minutes on these. This is one of my students who is advocating at a students' rights rally, and in her hand is the acronyms that she's breaking down. A lot of people don't even understand that students have these different things, and we don't even know what they mean. 504s really help students that have health needs. They have health conditions that may impair how they learn. It doesn't require them to have additional services, but they may need additional support. This is one of the reasons why when you're advocating for exceptional learners, we may want to consider having a full-time nurse or nurse practitioner in every school, because we have students who have health conditions. A lot of these are known as indivisible disabilities. SST is the student support team. You may have a lot of questions around this because this was set up to help combat the school to prison pipeline. A lot of our students who have behavioral challenges as defined by the school go through this process. Then you have IEP, individualized learning plans for our students. You have IHPs. A lot of people don't know what this is. Quick story, very short. I shared this with our ELA team. I learned about IHP because we had a student who passed away in the onset of the pandemic. We did not realize, one, that our school district did not update these annually. And we also did not realize that she had a severe health condition regarding her heart. And so when she passed away, we did a lot of research. Our students did a lot of advocacy around making sure that IHPs were reviewed annually by the school districts before they're given to the schools, and that we also have some training in place to walk parents through this. And so if you have a student that has severe bronchitis, asthma, I'm thinking about illnesses that have been impacted by the pandemic, whether it's a heart condition, anything around that nature, as a parent, as a teacher, as a stakeholder in the school, you do have the right to advocate for getting awareness and also resources for any of these areas. BIP is behavior intervention plan, and then EIP is early intervention plan. And if you have a student, or if you have a child who is in pre-K that may be showing some difficulty with auditory, also social emotional learning skills, then there may be an EIP that's set up to help, work with those things identified. Very important acronyms to know if you're advocating for students who are identified as exceptional learners. They are impacted by these things. They also may be differently named in your area. So these are the major ones. Ones that are normally overlooked are IHPs and EIP. So you may have to get some more research in your school district. All right, now, what is advocacy? Here are one of my former students at the board meeting, advocating in his native language and also navigating in English for what he wanted to make sure the board understood. And so Webster tells us that an advocate is one who defends or maintains a cause, one who supports or promotes the interests of a cause or a group. And now we want strong parent advocates, but we also know that parents want to see their students being able to speak and say, this is what they need, this is what they want. And so a big part of advocacy is realizing that we all play a role. We all can lift our voices and support in different ways to build things needed for advocacy. So again, former student in action, speaking at the board meeting. I'm encouraging us to also make sure that we're making space for parents and students to share their experiences and share their voices. So right here, before I move to the next section, I would love to know, has anyone advocated at your school board locally, maybe the State Board of Education, for things that are needed for exceptional learners? I'm going to look at the chat. I see some good comments. Yes, IHPs are individual health plans. Yes, those are for students who have severe needs. SST is the student support team. Okay, awesome. And if anyone has been to, I see some people are responding, yes, they have been to board meetings, parents, teachers. As a former teacher, I also want to state that teachers do have the right to advocate. Now, I'm going to throw this in just because it's important for everyone to know. Teachers, social workers, special education coordinators, we all are under contracts with school districts. And so a big thing that the system does in order to not get parents and students what they may want to have in their school, but the board may not want to allot them money, is to silence the educators. So I also tell parents and I tell students that you have to have good relationships with your teachers, because we are allies that can get information and resources to parents to be able to go in and get the things that are truly needed in order for every student who learns differently to have the support they need. So kudos to parents, teachers who are on, and other stakeholders that have been to their state boards, their local school boards, to advocate for exceptional learners. All right, now how to be a successful advocate. This is one of my former students. I would share this about Hannah. She is also one of the many students that you've seen in the presentation, a part of the Students for Equity group. This is a group that I started for my former students. Exceptional learners have never really had a platform to advocate for themselves. And so what I heard from parents, what I heard from students is that we would love to hear more stories of what our students are going through, what they're truly experiencing, and what they need. And so we started with the Students for Equity group. I must shout out my coworker, Maritza. Her daughter, Mecca, is a part of the group, gifted and talented student, and she's in the mix, advocating for what accelerated learners, for dual exceptional learners, that includes students who have dual languages, need in and out of school. And so these students will say, in order to be a successful advocate, you have to be bold. This is not on the presentation. This is directly from the mouth of the students in this group, and who are advocating for themselves, but they're also advocating for their peers. And I want to go back to the beginning of the presentation where I stated that exceptional learners is every student. And so now these students who are oftentimes counted out, they're oftentimes overlooked, they're oftentimes disregarded, they are advocating for the empowerment of every student within their school. So here are three things that I would say you could take away in order to be a successful advocate. You've heard me echo this, of course, throughout the presentation thus far, and that's listening to our students. I can tell you, as a veteran educator, I won't tell you how many years just yet, but I have found that there are more situations where students are not listened to by educators, by teachers, and also by parents. They're not listened to. And so I think that what we're seeing, especially coming out of the pandemic, we aren't listening to the needs of our students. A lot of our students, especially who are exceptional learners, are dealing with social, emotional, and behavior disorders that they have been diagnosed with. And so in order for us to truly make sure that we're advocating for them, again, we have to really be intentional about listening to what they're saying, what they're not saying, listening to their body language, but also listening to and looking at this through a lens of seeing what their interests are. And so this is very important when advocating for our kids. Also staying connected. I shared this especially with parents because a lot of parents are not in the field of education. They're working 2 or 3 jobs, as a lot of us are, to maintain and kind of thrive in our society. And so staying connected starts with having good, honest, clear communication with the teacher that is involved with the student. If parents are able to maintain that, if teachers are able to maintain that with parents and students, if students know that they could go to their parent and say, hey, you know, my teacher is struggling with this. We see them coming in and saying they're going to bring us resources and we don't get it. We need headphones. We need tablets. That's something that's helping everyone. If students can advocate for what they need, and what they see their teachers need, then that's how we really get movement in regards to educational equity. So staying connected looks like building those strong relationships, something that I've said throughout the presentation, because that's how we really see change. The third thing is asking questions. There's not a wrong question. I know that people have different beliefs around that. The teacher in me says there is not a wrong question because, again, everyone learns differently. As I'm speaking, I realize that some people may be on work calls. Your phone may be going off. The dog could be barking. There's a myriad of things that happen throughout our day as we're participating in things and then we're doing things. And so I realize that asking questions is a good way for advocates to be successful because, again, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't ask questions, you're not opening the door for people to give you information and also an opportunity to be engaged and have that conversation. Don't forget what the students say. How to be a successful advocate. Hannah would tell you in her speech, be bold. So make sure that you are also including that. Now, focus on the students. Before I even go to what's on the actual presentation, you've heard me talk a lot about student advocacy because parents want to see their child successful. Teachers don't come to work every day to fail kids. Ripley's Believe It or Not. Now, that doesn't mean that every teacher is a good teacher. I can only speak for myself, and I can also speak for Whitley now. We are some amazing teachers. Let me just say, we are, a diamond in the rough, though. All teachers are not like us. And so I understand that in order for us to make sure that we're making the biggest impact, we have to focus on students. This is my student, Kaylin. Kaylin is also one of the students in the Students for Equity group. Short story, when I was a school administrator, Kaylin was one of the first students that was sent to my office. When I looked up his name, I immediately saw the flag. So, okay, emotional behavior disorder, and the list goes on. And I'm like, but this student has amazing grades. Like he's hitting the mark academically. So what is the disconnect? The teachers were pushing for me to suspend him. They wanted him to be removed from the school. And I said, absolutely not. I followed the steps that I gave to you guys. I actually was one of the first people that sat down and listened to what he had to say. And he was so frustrated with his peers who were exceptional learners being bullied in class. He was raised that you should protect the underdog. And he realized that exceptional learners are the underdog in our schools. A lot of times our exceptional learners, when they're in co-taught classes, and let's be honest, you can share in the chat how successful your schools have been with co-teaching models, but a lot of times that co-teacher isn't present. So you have one teacher trying to implement various strategies of reaching all students. And so Kaylin would be the student that would break up the fights. He would step in when he saw that students were being picked on and being bullied. And it was causing a distraction because he would also be struggling with his own disability and trying to protect other students. When I had that conversation with him, he was one of the students that helped create the Students for Equity group. He felt like student voices were not being heard and what they needed was not being implemented in the classroom. He felt like parents were disconnected. He felt like the majority of the teachers were not listening to what students were saying. And so it's important that when we're advocating, a lot of times we're hearing what parents want, we're hearing what teachers need, and we're hearing what school board members, adults are all saying has to happen and what's needed. And we have to take a step back and remember that the curriculums, the strategies are all impacting not just the academic success, but the social, emotional, the lives of these children. And so in order for us to be successful in anything, we have to make sure that we are truly staying focused on the students. Fast forward from 6th grade with Kaylin to him being in 10th grade. This is him at the Capitol during the pandemic, advocating for students who are exceptional learners, breaking the mold and letting people know that, yes, we do use our voices. We do speak up for ourselves. We are advocating for what is needed for students who are impacted by special education programs across this nation. A very proud moment because, again, if I didn't take the time to implement these strategies of being a successful advocate, I could have been the administrator that expelled the student. And where would he be today if that happened? Kaylin is now in his first year at Virginia State University. He graduated a year early. And so I'm sharing that because, again, exceptional learners can thrive and excel when they feel like, one, they can advocate for themselves. Two, they can have the support from home and also strong teachers and educators who are not just advocating for them, but also working with them to ensure that they're getting what they need. So I hope that sharing these stories has really made an impact. A big part of advocacy, again, is elevating the voices of those who are least heard. I have to say that those voices are parents. They are teachers that are oftentimes silenced and overlooked. And of course, most importantly, the voices of our students. And so I talked a lot. I'm also looking at the time. So I think that we may be right on time. I wanted to leave some time for questions, especially if you have any questions around strategies, some of the terminologies. Also, what was not on the term list, because most people are familiar with this, gifted and talented is also in the mix of this because accelerated learners are also on the spectrum. I know that may be a whole nother conversation and TED Talk per se. But I do want to make sure you guys had the information to connect with the National Parents Union. The work that we're doing with ELA has helped us to bring in organizations that are focused on supporting students, parents, teachers, and families that have exceptional learners. And of course, we are advocating at our local, at our state, but also on the federal level for students who are exceptional learners. And so again, I want to make sure that you guys are connected. Thank you, Maritza. Maritza is also a part of NPU. She put in another terminology, individual learning plan. That is, again, by state, it may look differently, it may show up differently, but these things are all connected to how we're supporting exceptional learners. So with that being said, are there any questions? We're almost at 2:30, so I wanted to leave about 5 minutes for us to have questions. If anyone wants to share any testimonies, if you want to know any more about the success I've had as a special education teacher using these strategies with my students, but also with parents and other educators, I want to also highlight this. Now, I'm an advocate for teachers, parents, and students. But again, every teacher is not like Whitley and myself. So I do realize that there are teachers who do not understand their role with advocating. And so there are strategies to use to help get teachers and educators on board. So if there are any questions, you can drop them in the chat. I believe, Whitley, I don't know if people can come off of mute. That may be silly of me to ask that because it's a webinar. But if people have questions in the chat, we can read them and ask them. Thank you again, Maritza. Melissa, thank you. I've been in education. This is year 18. So I'm super, super excited. I have former students who have been in my classrooms that are now teachers. They are also special education teachers. Not all of them, but there are a few, specifically my students who are exceptional learners. And so they are at the Capitals advocating with their students, very similar to what they saw me doing with them. So yes, you guys will learn a lot. Thank you guys. I'm reading the comments. Stay connected with the National Parents Union on social media. You'll see a lot of our work there. We do have a question that just came through outside of the comments. Again, thank you for those comments. Do you have any recommendations for working families to get translation for documents or meetings with students to advocate? Yes, for schools to advocate for students. This is a great question. I'm in Georgia. Of course, we're a national organization. I reside in Georgia. We have an organization called Watching the Funds Cobb, and they're one of our EPIC grantees. They specifically are focused on helping parents and families with getting documents through open records requests. We recently had a training. We brought in a special education attorney who went through how to make sure that documents are done with fidelity, that they are being updated annually by school boards. I would say that I have had to correct a lot of IEPs that came to us from other schools that had misdiagnosed students. The resources were not updated. It did not have data that reflected if the student was growing or not. So I really appreciate that question, because one of the recommendations I would say is making sure that one, if whatever your school board, if it's a school council, school board, knowing what their stance on special education is, and also knowing who the leaders are, because accountability is the strongest tool to use in regards to getting documentation, especially for translation, because we also have federal programs that connect to special education that require the LEA, which oftentimes is the school district, to ensure that these things are happening. And Jessica, I'm going to add this, and then you can definitely connect with me if you need more information. A lot of times, being a former district administrator, what happens is we'll meet with the superintendent, we'll go over what the federal and state regulations are, we'll send it down the pipeline to the school. The area leader and the principal and their team will make decisions based off of, I hate to say this for a lack of better terms, their judgment. And oftentimes it may be done with fidelity, it may not be. And so we as district administrators won't understand or even hear that until it comes up at a board meeting or is sent to us in a report. So I would definitely say, make sure you're connected with what the district stance is, so you know on a higher level, if you're not seeing it done in your school, who to go to. And also, we teach our parents documentation beats conversation. So when you're having these conversations with people, please make sure you're documenting that through email, whichever form you can. Memo, I'm gonna throw that out there. I know that may be outdated, but it doesn't matter. If it's a sheet of paper you have to copy, it may sound funny, but I'm being really serious by any means necessary, because I've seen this so many times in school districts, especially from leadership. They don't want to pay that dollar when they're wrong. So making sure that you have it documented is important. Okay, we have another question that came in. When parents advocate for their children, how do we not create a barrier with the school team who may view our parental concerns as a personal attack on them with meaningful progress is not made? That's a great question, because ego is a thing. It's a big thing in education, because I'm going to be very honest, when people are degreed and they get these certifications, it does something to their heads. Teaching is a gift, it's an art, and it's something that should be valued in the regard of, it doesn't matter what credentials you have. Your focus should be on students. And so what I would say to parents is making sure you have a good relationship with your teachers, but also knowing how your school leaders, how they flow is big on personality. So looking at the personality of your school leader and knowing how to say things without stepping on toes, especially for tier 3 students. I would say for all tiers, because it's important really starting at one, that you know how to maneuver and communicate. Do your research. This is what I tell my students. Before you go and talk to someone, do your research on them. Where are they from? What are they connected to? What have been other people's experiences? Students do this well because they know the assistant principal or principal not to mess with, or the administrator in the school not to get in trouble with, because of reputation, how they've been engaged with people. Are they no nonsense? Are they fair? And so these are questions and things to ask. And then also reminding the team that, hey, as a parent, I know this is my right, but also I'm letting you guys know that this is what I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing it at home. I'm not seeing it in the after school or the tutoring programs. And so I'm just asking, can we look at a different way of doing this? And a lot of times you may need to bring in, depending on what the title is at the school, the parent coordinator. Or the Title I coordinator or the parent liaison. I'm not sure what term may be used in your school, but this is also a person who can help advocate and navigate through those barriers. Great questions. Any other questions? Again, my email is jason@npunion.org. I can definitely go through scenarios. I kind of mentioned in answering the question that I've been a district administrator before. I've also been a school leader. So any questions around how to navigate through dealing with school leaders, because it can be a nightmare. School teams, a lot of times, are set up because they are not implementing family engagement standards. That's another way to determine if your school team is really going to be focused. Thank you, Maritza. We do have a FACT team. Every school should have a FACE, family and community engagement team that drives this work. If they don't, that's where our advocacy comes in. But NPU also has a FACT team of parents and experts who really help us provide support to our partners, our affiliates, and also organizations that are helping impact this work. So again, we have a myriad of resources on our website, toolkits, and also information that we can provide. We have an amazing parent power team. This is Maritza's team. As you can see her dropping in a lot of the resources for parents to also help you in implementing some things at your school if these things, in fact, are not there. So we're a great partner and resource. We're excited to be working with ELA and this amazing team. We All Learn Differently is one of our projects that will be coming very soon. You will be seeing some parent voices engaged with that. And before I leave you, because I'm going to turn it back over to Whitley, I want everyone to save the date for August the 29th. This is going to be our third national town hall around literacy. And we're going to be focusing in on social emotional learning. I like to say that social emotional learning and special education are first cousins because they definitely are needed and they definitely support each other. And so if you have an exceptional learner, if you are in the special education area, social worker, psychologist, you already are connected to social emotional learning. So definitely mark your calendars for that. Stay tuned to our website. We will have some of our ELA partners connected as well. I'm not going to name any names because some of them may be on our panel and we like to make a big announcement around that. But this has been amazing. Thank you guys for staying on this long, for listening to me talk and share these resources. And again, to this ELA family and Whitley, who has hosted this, thank you guys so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was amazing. It was very insightful and brought back memories of me being in the classroom advocating for my own student. And thank you everyone for attending as well. Just as we did at our Community of Action, it is important that we continue to have these discussions and work together to break down the silos that can impede progress in special education. And remember, the more we learn and share, the better equipped we are to make a positive impact on educating all learners. On behalf of ELA and NPU, thank you for joining us today for advocating for exceptional learners. You'll see today's webinar survey in the chat. And you can also check out the website at educatingalllearners.org and follow us on Twitter at educate_.org. And also be sure to check out the National Parents Union at their website, nationalparentsunion.org, and follow them at National Parents. Keep an eye out for an email with links and other information that was shared today. Everyone have a great day. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.